and welcome to Fathoms Deep, a Black Sails podcast from Common Room Radio. I'm Liz Stevens.
And I'm Daphne Olive. Liz.
Yeah.
My heart's kind of broken.
Well, this was an incredibly tough episode.
Yeah, my heart is totally broken. I'm sounding way happier right now than I am just because I'm happy to see you. But...
Has your heart been, shredded by barnacles and keel hauled? Would you say that that's what happened to your heart?
Yes. Oh, my God, Liz, seriously? I mean, I know
I'm
we're about
sorry.
to talk about
Too
that.
soon?
Too soon. Okay. Well,
tough episode.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I wanted to welcome all of our new listeners because we have so many.
Yeah, which is so wonderful. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for joining us. You may have missed the fact that I crazy love Blackbeard.
You've always loved Teach. It's true.
I have always loved Teach.
That's one of the few times you've actually called him Blackbeard. You usually call him Teach, which is kind of the more affectionate moniker. Yeah.
I know. I love him dearly. And yes, and I basically have spent months and months since I actually watched season 3 for the first time, but 2 months or more on Fathoms Deep actually talking about how excited I was to have way more Jack and Teach scenes.
Right, of course.
So yeah, kind of doubly sad. I'm very sad.
Sorry,
really hard for
it's
me.
true. No, it's true. You've been texting. It still hurts so bad.
Yeah. Heart still broken. Heart still broken. Okay. I know. Well, we will get into all of that, and I can't say I'm looking forward to it, but it's interesting. It's a really interesting episode.
It is an interesting episode, yeah.
Even though it has torn my heart to pieces. Yeah. So welcome, new listeners. We had a few more things. I wanted to specifically, even though we're really late, we were really busy and we didn't check our voicemail for a while, but we had 2 voicemails.
We did. They were wonderful.
I know. They were so sweet from Janine and from Cordelia. Everyone, you should call us. Leave us messages.
Fun.
It makes us so happy. And we will play them if you ask us to.
I love the name Cordelia, I should say. Yes.
So those were lovely. Thank you. And also there had been requests for us to quickly talk about our trip to New York.
Oh, sure.
Again, for our new listeners, I'm recording from right outside of Washington, D.C., and Liz is recording from Oklahoma City. And we've been friends for a while, but we've only actually been in the same place a few times.
Right.
And one of them was last week, and it was great.
And it was in New York City, and it was gorgeous. And we got to hang out with Toby Schmitz.
We did.
We
got
to hang out
with Toby Schmitz. We got to see his play. If you're listening now, it's not too late to go see The Present. It's amazing.
Highly recommend. It was amazing.
It was. Yeah, we enjoyed it very, very much.
Yeah.
But also, welcome to Common Room Radio. We have other podcasts as well. You should check out our website. And there are a bunch of great podcasts. Liz does one with our friends Sarah and Vinton about Firefly. Liz and her best friend Sarah have an adorable podcast called Porch Club, where they talk about all sorts of personal stuff and get drunk, and it's adorable. And
basically, yes.
and new podcasts coming soon.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially if people support Common Room Radio on Patreon, then everyone will have more time.
That's
to
true.
Be able to do more podcasts
into these podcasts. Yes, which do take a fair bit of time investment. Trust me.
Yes, they do.
No one knows better than Daphne.
All right, so let's get into this episode of Heartbreak. For this episode, the way I thought to structure it is that I wanted to talk in the beginning about this conversation between Rogers and Berenger, because I feel like it sets the tone for a lot of what happens throughout the whole episode. And it's kind of happening out of time. Like it's, we come back to it. And then we'll go into our more usual structure of groups of characters. I thought to do Jack and Anne and Teach and Rogers first, just rip off that Band-Aid and... that one's going to be the hardest for me, so I just would like to do that part first.
Yeah.
Not really for thematic reasons, more for personal reasons. And then we will go to Nassau, and we will talk about Max and Berenger and Eleanor.
Okay.
And then save what I see as the best for last and talk about our pirate resistance.
Okay, awesome.
I just wanted to quickly maybe just throw in some themes that I wanted us to look at throughout that I think is really interesting. I feel like this one had some really strong themes, and I know once upon a time we would have done that as thesis statements, but I thought to start with it. One of them that I want to kind of touch on each time is the difference between power perceived or not perceived, which is a theme that we've talked about for a long time.
Sure.
I also want to talk about mentors. I think that's something that really kind of comes into each conversation. So I'll
Interesting. Okay.
I think that mentors and I wanted to say also we had a few fun tidbits, or maybe just two fun tidbits that John Steinberg sent to us about this episode, or about this, I guess, about the season. The one that I wanted to bring up now is that there's an unofficial, but he sees as significant theme for season 4 of being love. So we should definitely, that needs to go on our list of things that we keep our eyes on. So I think that does relate to this episode in interesting ways. And that goes on the list that we've started compiling of things we need to keep track of, which is getting larger. We're only in the 3rd episode, and it's already getting to be a pretty large list.
Okay.
So yeah, let's start getting into our characters.
Okay.
Prepare to board. Aye.
All right. Well, I titled this first part, Hello, Woodes Rogers. I feel like we're finally meeting you.
Right? Woodes Rogers took such a dark turn in this episode. I don't like it. And I don't mean to say that, like, from a writing perspective, I don't like it. I think it's a bad choice. I just mean that I really enjoyed how much I liked him as a character, and that even though he was an antagonist to the pirates, I respected him and I liked him. And he was just, we talk about it all the time. You're supposed to hate this guy, but you can't help but like him. And now, wow.
Yes. So the thing I wanted to bring up, that I asked the question, like you had a good answer for it last week, but I brought up the question, why is Woodes Rogers looking at his book?
Yes. Well, and I thought about this with this episode. I think that he was remembering what had happened with his brother and stealing his resolve. I think he was reminding himself of what, in his mind, these dark deeds that have to be done. And there's that aspect of the storytelling, too, of how he talks about when he went through crew member by crew member, and only the one survived so that he could tell the tale.
Right. I wanted to bring up something else about his book. So remember in season 3, we had Jack very famously talking about his book, and we had Maddie looking at his book. I pulled out a bit from the carriage scene when Jack is all like, I know who you are. I read your book. What Rogers says, there are things you leave out of the book.
That is true.
Things you leave out because if it got around polite society what you are capable of when pushed, they might stop inviting you to their dinner parties.
And that's interesting because he said that he did spare the one crew member to tell the tale.
But that doesn't mean he put that in his book. That was a
that
Spanish crew member.
Still, okay. It just seems like an odd thing to try.
I thought about that too.
Yeah, to try and protect after you've already put that story out there. And it also made me think that there's probably at least something to it. I mean, you can't just leave out the fact that, I guess he could just completely rewrite history and say, and everybody returned home safely and was imprisoned, in good legal fashion. But, it's likely he skipped over the gory details, sure, taking his time with the captain, etc.
Exactly. That's my point, was that he probably told the tale about the winning and about the losing his brother, because he does say that later to Eleanor.
Right.
But remember, this is a world with no internet. This is a world where, news travels slowly.
True. Yeah, and there's always just gossip and rumors.
Exactly. So he, in the world of polite, English society, he could write that story. Well, he did. He wrote that story how he wanted it to be taken, and it served him well. But I feel like that was more, that was more for us. That was one of our hints. I mean, I feel like that's why I said last episode that like, or even in the first episode when he was being so calm, so calmly brutal.
Sure.
That it felt like a new side of him, but it didn't feel like a character break. Like it felt completely believable for him. So I just felt like this was our clue, just like he was saying it to Jack. And again, I feel like all of our pirate side characters were like, oh, we know who he is. Scott's like, you need to read the book so that you know your enemy. And it's just like, but did we? Did they?
Right,
did anyone know their enemy? Like this.
Of course,
is like,
Jack never soldiered through to the end either. So maybe
fair
he
enough.
would have known that raising the right white flag doesn't necessarily do what you needed to do for you.
Yeah, we'll get into that white flag soon.
We will.
All right, so after the bit of introduction about Rogers, like now we start with Berenger. We start our episode with Berenger.
Right.
And he's holding that locket and a bit teary.
Sure.
He's looking at...
So they're trying to humanize Berenger for us. Did that work for you?
Not so much, no.
Nope, not so much. Yeah. I'll tell you what, I actually was more moved by his loyalty to and concern for Rogers before Rogers totally turned on me.
Yeah.
But I was actually more moved by that than I was by the locket and the pictures.
I was more moved by his feelings for his men, like that he was willing to, and again, I mean, this is tied in. Like, the thing that moved me most about Berenger, and again, I can say this now that he's gone. We were so sure. Like, I think it was last episode, we were like, oh, we're going to be with him for a long time.
Oh,
or
yeah.
Not.
Whoops.
Or not. Or not.
Can't get them all right, y'all.
Yeah. I was more moved by the idea that his grief and anger about losing his men in the ambush in the end of season 3 was something that would make him reject, like basically go up against England, against his duty, I guess. And I guess the locket is a further illustration of that, because clearly by not listening, not following the orders to return to England, that means he essentially is losing his family, because he is now, he said there would be repercussions.
Right.
Yeah. Berenger's never, we had 3 episodes of him. He never really like settled into me. So then he's talking to Rogers, and I do like this conversation. I mean, I think this conversation is haunting. Berenger seems upset, right? So maybe still about the locket, maybe about the man he's becoming. I'm just not sure exactly. But he hides from, like, Rogers is like, what are you still doing awake? And he's like, well, I'm contemplating how to respond to what I found out from my scout, which we later find out is about Max.
Sure. Uh-huh.
And then Rogers is like, should I, do you want to tell me about it? And he's like, you have enough on your mind. Let this be my concern. So he's actively now gonna, like, pretty much hiding from Rogers that he is planning on arresting Max in the morning.
Right. Yeah. It seemed very sincere. Do you think it was sincere?
I do think it was sincere. And I wanted to bring up...
I think so, too.
I wanted to bring up the beginning of, I think, what's happening through this whole episode is this comparison between Berenger's behavior in this episode and Eleanor's when she hangs Vane.
Of course.
She also thought or contrived in her mind and told herself the story that she was doing this to protect Rogers. And I think that there's an element of Berenger possibly doing the same thing here.
Right. I'll do what you can't because you're blinded or clouded by this loyalty or friendship or, okay.
So that's interesting. But then he brings up basically that Rogers is doing the same to Eleanor, and now I'm mad at Rogers. This was like my first level of being mad at Rogers, because he says, did you talk to your wife about what lies ahead?
Right.
And Rogers doesn't say anything. We had some really interesting back and forth with the two sides of his face and which is in the light.
Yes, we did. I noticed that too. I noticed that too.
Which, Where's Andrew Tice when we need him?
Right.
And
probably furiously taking notes on this episode. I know.
I hope that Andrew will talk about that. But yes,
I'm sure he will.
So it was like interesting because there was like left and right, but there's also the whole thing about the scarred side of his face, which I'm starting to really, really buy. I think it was Kim who brought this up originally. I think this whole thing of like the scar being his pirate side and the not scar being his not pirate side, like this is legit. Like I really,
Definitely.
I've always liked the idea, but I feel like this episode is like,
hammering it home.
Yeah, pretty much. Right. And so he doesn't answer, but I mean, I think they both understand that he didn't tell Eleanor, like,
right.
So that he was really being deceptive. Like this whole, like, I'm going to get in a ship so that I can lure Teach away so that you can, like, just so that you can get away, but I'll be safe.
Yeah.
They had just had a conversation about him not hiding stuff from her.
They had. It's true. I don't like it.
I don't like it either. I mean, I don't like ultimately what he does. I also don't like it on the relationship level.
Yeah, and I can see why I mean, of course he can't tell Eleanor that. And, I mean, in her defense, Eleanor is the one who has been saying from the go not to underestimate these people.
Right.
And
well,
he was damned lucky that he pulled this off. But
we need
hard to watch.
We'll talk about that part too.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we get into the conversation about what Berenger says to him. He says, this is very haunting. And this is, this is where we start to, I feel like, understand the tone of this episode and the tone of Rogers. He says, contemplating these things is most difficult. When the dread moment arrives, your true nature will assert itself.
Yes. Which was creepy, yes, once we saw that true nature.
Right. Which is while we're hearing this, we see Rogers going downstairs to the belly of this boat. So this for me reminded me of two things. One, Flint, after he has the conversation with Scott about whether or not he should bomb Nassau, we also get almost that identical view of just like his feet kind of going downstairs.
Oh, right. That descent into darkness.
Descent into darkness, which we also have in the dreams in season 3.
Well, and it also put me in mind, not this descent here, but all of the actions of Woodes Rogers in this episode, of Silver when he first said, "You didn't tell me how good it would feel, how good the darkness feels." You can definitely see that in Woodes Rogers. And you can see the fight against it, too.
Right. And I mean, that's what we have both in this conversation and also when he's on the ship preparing the night before. We have this back and forth of one side of his face being in light and one in darkness and just going back and forth between them. The thing that's interesting to me that in the conversation, there are moments where he's very steel-faced and very resolved looking, but we're seeing his not scarred side.
Yes. I noticed that too. So maybe an integration of these two halves?
An integration when in darkness, that might be,
Sure. Like when in darkness he pulls to his true self and his true nature is revealed.
Right.
Oh,
right.
Goodness.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he asks if they're good men, and then Berenger says there's not a good man among them. And this, I have to bring this to some other thing from a past episode. I'm going to be doing this a lot, everyone, so please indulge my Black Sails nerdery this time. Berenger says there's not a good man among them. Some of them may have been before all of this. Some may be again after. And I want to call this back to what Abigail said about the pirates when she was on the ship on the Lady Charleston. Right. And she said, I have that too. She said, I know that any appearance of civility from them is but a glimpse of the men they once were. A ghost that shows itself only while darker things that now govern their souls lay dormant. So I feel like this is really
I love Abigail so much.
I know. I miss her.
I miss her.
I know.
Yes,
I miss her too.
I miss her. Yeah.
We miss Abigail all the time. But I feel like this comes from that same mentality that deep down, like as terrifying as all of this is, but this idea that people aren't good or bad, that people are what they are in a moment, and that is fluid, that it has to do with some combination of the experiences they've had and the choices they've made. Like this idea that one could be dark and then actually come out of it again into light is actually very hopeful. As like dismal as this all seems, and when we see the faces of the guys who are down in the belly of the ship with Rogers, how terrifying they all look. I mean, it's almost like the mirror image of what Abigail was saying, was that these are dark people are kind of pretending to not be so dark for my sake,
right.
but that she had this faith that they aren't, this isn't their essence. This is that all of it might be what has been done to them, or, I don't know. I feel like there's some sort of kind of beautiful pessimism, optimism in this kind of view of humanity, because just like you could be drawn into darkness, you could actually come out of it again.
Yes, sure.
So like somehow this manages to be totally terrifying and also kind of cool. I don't and I mean, I don't mean cool in the like they're all dark and they're going to fight and do horrible things to each other, but like cool in my sense of like maybe there's hope for people. I know. Okay, fine. I take it back.
This was a hard episode. Let's look for the silver linings. Sure.
I just silver lining the hell out of that conversation.
You did. You sure did. Yep.
Okay, but back to darkness, he says, right now, good men is not what the moment requires. This calls for dark men to do dark things. And I don't know. I'm just saying, who seems darker at the end of this episode than Rogers, to be honest?
Right. Yeah. Don't be afraid to lead them to it. And he sure did lead them down into darkness. Gosh.
Yes.
And you could sense the discomfort aboard that ship.
Yes. Now we have Rogers talking about his story. Now, I wanted to bring up the last time that Rogers told the story of his brother and the Spanish galleon.
Right. Which was to Eleanor, right?
Which was to Eleanor. And so that was in episode 5 of season 3. And it's interesting. I kind of suddenly am looking at this conversation a little bit differently. The conversation started with her asking about the scar.
Oh, right.
Right? And this was, I think, before we really got into this conversation of the scar representing his pirate side or his dark side, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah, sure.
And it's interesting because she says, what happened that time? How did you get that scar? And suddenly, when he's telling the story, now that we know this version of the story, where the story becomes much darker, where it's not, there he left a lot out of what he ended up telling Berenger.
Yes.
Perhaps the question she's asking on some level is, how did you become... I mean, she doesn't know she's asking that, but I feel like the show might be asking, when it's saying, how did you get that scar? It's saying, how did you get this darkness?
Yeah, interesting.
Right? So if the scar represents that side of him, and he tells the story in answer to, how did you get that scar?
Right. I like
it's
that.
just, you know what I mean? I wasn't sure if that was like a thought that was making a lot of sense, but it seemed very significant to me.
Yeah, definitely.
So when he tells the story, again, he adds some humor because he ends it with, he talks about, that's when he uses the term, the desperation of a dying thing. That's what he calls that last shot that kills his brother.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
So that was very significant at the time when he told it to Eleanor, because it was relating to what he was basically saying the pirates were.
Oh, uh-huh.
But he ends with, my brother was dead and I had this, but then he immediately goes to, not humorous, but the lighter version of, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here. Like, I wouldn't have this story to tell. But when he's talking to Berenger about it, we get a much different version of this story.
We do. Gosh.
Right. We hear this part right after we had that moment of him and Teach staring at each other, which is what made it so terribly terrifying for me, because he talks about how he killed everyone slowly and painfully, starting with the captain.
Yes.
And this relates to the thing I wanted to bring up in the beginning about when power most perceived or power not perceived. Like this, this was a story, and then I guess a foreshadowing of us seeing Rogers wanting to make a clear demonstration of power.
Which he sure did. Jeez.
Well, he did and he didn't. We'll get into that very soon. we'll
Okay.
see. I feel I'm good. Well, we'll go through the whole thing, but I think it kind of backfired on him, actually.
Oh, like it did on Berenger? Okay.
I'm jumping ahead of myself. So yeah,
Yes.
so
yeah. It's so hard not to. It's hard to have this
I know.
conversation and not talk about what happened on that show.
I know.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of just I know. I know. I'm doing that thing where I'm like, no, not yet, but it's like yeah,
I know.
It's
Like,
the
but
thing.
you brought it up. I know.
I know. It's the thing that's just weighing on both of us. But yeah, so he tells the story, and he tells it in a terrifying way, and he says, "My instinct is the same now as it was then." And the tie-in to the two other things I brought up in the beginning is that he talks about his brother in such a beautiful way, and he talks about his brother as a mentor.
Oh,
He talks to his brother as someone who taught him and was better than him, and as someone he loves. And that's the tie-in, is that he says, I will show the consequences of threatening what I hold most dear. So this is about love. This isn't just about being the governor and fighting pirates. Had he been just the governor fighting pirates, the smart thing to do would have been what he did in the end, which is bring them all back to Nassau.
Right.
There was, keel hauling is not the act of a governor.
It's not, but again, he does have to do a show of force at this point. I mean, he and Berenger are on the same side, and they have to squash this rebellion, and they have to cut off the heads.
Right.
And if they have painted these men as monsters, he has to slay them as monsters and not quietly as simple criminals.
Right. Well, although I would argue that what he did with Teach was to kill him as a simple criminal, because the only people who saw that happen was his own crew, which isn't.
Well, yeah,
he was
but that's a lot of people to tell that tale.
No, except he was planning on doing it to all of them. He was planning on killing all of them. He said very specifically that my instinct is the same as it was then.
Huh. That's right. Well, but he said my instinct. I still think that's different from his plan.
Okay, I think that
He might have done those three. He might have done Teach, Jack, and Anne, but I don't think every one of them.
I think he was going to kill every single one of them. But okay, so we'll disagree on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, the thing to do if you were trying to make a demonstration of punishment is to bring Teach back and hang him.
Yes.
I mean, we already established that, his quote unquote trials were,
Right. I mean, this is going to sound awful and like I'm a supervillain, but he can still bring him back in the shape that he was in and hang him.
Absolutely. Yes,
But he just dumped him back over the water, didn't he, in the end?
Nope. We don't know what
remember.
happened. We don't know what happened.
That's what I thought. He still got that body? That's
who
what I would
knows?
do if I was a supervillain. I would hang the body as it was. I would keel haul him and then just hang the corpse for people to see what I'm capable of.
It's very possible that
Were I
we
a
will get to
supervillain?
see that next episode.
It's quite possible because, yes, we're... see, and again, are we talking about that scene now? Or are we not talking about that
not yet.
scene now?
One more second.
Okay, damn
One
it,
more second.
Daphne. All right.
Okay,
Move
no,
on.
actually, no, we can. I think that I said what I wanted to say, but I do. Right. I wanted to tie it into love. I wanted to tie it into him losing his mentor, and emotions, like that thing that we always talk about.
Oh, it's certainly a very emotional, and we talked about that a lot in this episode. It comes up, this idea that when you have one emotion that is so strong, again, we talked about it being that darkness, it will cloak itself in whatever it must to compel you to act.
Right. Right. Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about the fun part before we get to the scary part, because we now will do our Jack and Anne and Teach in the show chronological order. So we do start. We do start with my.
So it does start pretty fun and lighthearted.
It does. My last. That's it. I didn't expect it to be my last, but my last Jack and Teach scene.
Well, let's not skip that we start with Anne ascending those stairs like an effing Amazon queen, amazing.
Right.
Just, there's no doubt anymore about the identity of Anne Bonny.
Oh my God, I love her.
We had so much doubt for her in the beginning. Remember, we didn't just quite understand her lurking around with the swords and the sneer. And then we had that beautiful metamorphosis that she had and the doubt of her identity. And we talked about that wonderful scene in front of the mirror. And as she was trying to navigate her relationship with Max and Jack. And now she has chosen her path. She is with Jack. She is butting heads with Jack. And just, she has never been...
She's killer. I know.
Clearer. She has never been more herself. She's never been more Anne than she is now. And they're really depicting that beautifully.
I know. I love it. I really do. Yes. And gives me joy in an episode where I really need some joy.
Sure.
That's other characters as well.
Although I still find it interesting that she seems to want to go away with Jack. And just, I mean, when she says go away with Jack, does she mean get their own ship? Or does she, I mean, it seems like she means leave piracy. Like go, that's what she's talked about before, like go and settle down in, Brussels and whatever the hell they speak in Brussels, right?
I don't know if I don't know if she actually has a plan. She's like, get me the hell out of here. Because remember what she said about the island. She's like, that island makes us do shit we don't want to do. She's like, I think she understands that the situation they're in is a fatal one.
Yeah.
And that she just wants to leave. She just,
just wants to live. Sure. Well, we talked, I guess it was with our interview with Toby Schmitz, I suppose, when he talked about Anne Bonny being most herself when in battle. But she doesn't seem to think that, which is interesting.
Yeah, that's very possible.
I mean, if she wants to get away from it.
Well, I think she wants to get away from this situation.
Well, I was going to say, though, that's what I meant, though. Does she want them to get their own ship and just do their own piracy thing? Or does she want to disappear?
I'm sure she would love that. Like, I think what she's seeing as the danger here is now, like, why Nassau? Why this fixation on...
Why this fight? Right. Yeah, why die on this hill?
Exactly.
Sure. Okay.
Like, yeah, okay. I think she'd be perfectly happy to, like, kill people all the time, but she doesn't need to, like...
I'm sorry. That got me.
Well, again, I was like, they need to go to Europe and drink champagne. And Toby's like, yeah, and would be better. And I was like, well, but she'd be fine if she got to kill some people whilst they did it.
Right,
Like,
that's true. Yeah.
So we have Jack and Teach talking strategy, and they are just peas in a pod. And then when Anne asks them a question, they speak to her in unison, and she just gives them a look like, what the fuck, guys? What just happened? You two are speaking to me in unison.
Which, and I loved that, though.
I loved that so much. It was fantastic. Yeah. And then Teach is like giving them instructions, and this I loved so much. I love this so much.
Yes.
I know, I get a little bit of joy.
Moment of levity.
I know, I love it so much.
God.
And he says, he says to Jack, have you ever captained a ship this size? And Jack says,
God, no.
Love it. And then Teach repeats himself.
Yes.
He says, have you ever captained a ship of this size? And Jack says, sure. And Teach says, good. I love it. And I love it.
It was fantastic. No, I agree. Completely fantastic.
I love everything about this. Again, humor me. This is the last time I get to talk about an interaction between these two.
Sure.
I love this partly because I'm, again, going back, everyone who hasn't listened to this, listen to our interview with Toby Schmitz. It's awesome. Back to what Toby said about why Vane and Anne, like, that they both really loved that thing about Jack, that kind of gambler, wild.
Sure, yeah.
So, like, Jack was doing that thing with Teach, and Teach, I love this where Teach is like, okay, yeah, I don't really like that thing that you do where you, like, are just, like, flying by the seat of your pants. So let me ask you again. I'd much rather you show me competency even if you don't have it.
Yep.
And that goes back to what I said before about Teach. Like, he's not a micromanager. He's just like, show me competency. Awesome. I'm on my way to go do my thing. You go do your thing.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a mentoring moment. Like, that was a moment where Teach said to Jack, hey, let's readjust things.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love his, like, just that thing that we've talked about Teach before, like that core of just confidence and power that he has.
Sure, yeah.
That is the way he leads, which is so different than how so many other captains, well, Flint, that's so different from how Flint leads, who's like, definitely. I trust no one, I micromanage, I'm, bit crazy pants all the time. And Teach is just like, dude, be cool. And Jack's
very
like,
different style.
Right. Yeah. And Jack's like, hey, Teach told me to be cool.
Be cool, Jack. Be cool.
Be cool. Right. And then he's like gazing off at Teach when Anne comes up to talk to him. And I think that's probably exactly what he's saying. He's just like, Teach thought I was cool. Teach thought I was cool. Oh my God. Teach thought I was cool. This is fantastic. Sorry, just doing a little bit of Jack inner monologue. I can't do it in Jack's
That's
accent.
okay. Well, and speaking of Jack and his monologue, because we cut right after that to, Anne saying she wants to move on from this.
Right.
And Jack talks about Teach being brilliant as well as strong.
No.
Which was a new level of respect that we saw for Teach, rather than just kind of like a blind hero worship that we kind of saw in the beginning, like for the legendary status, but seeing him for what he is, and in a way that few others do, or that people want to to buck up against somehow, saying that they can't see the both in one man. Then he talks about how revenge had clouded that brilliance and that wisdom. Not for Jack, which is interesting because initially it had very much for Jack. It took Anne. It took Anne to pull Jack out of that.
Yep.
But he didn't seem to acknowledge that. He seemed to think that it was his own.
Oh, yeah.
He's so arrogant. I love Jack, but he's very arrogant.
He is very arrogant, and I love him for it for some reason. Right. He said, what did he say? First of all, before we go there, I just want to talk about, so Anne, he's gazing off at Teach, and Anne's like, this won't ever end for us. And Jack actually is still looking away, gazing into the distance with his starry eyes, with his heart eyes.
Sure.
And he actually says, just offhandedly, what? He wasn't even listening to her.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. He pisses. I mean, I love Jack. We all know I love Jack. He pisses me off in this scene because he's back into full Minister Jack Rackham mode.
All about my name. Well,
yep.
And even that is... He just seems, what's the word?
Dazzled? Intoxicated?
No. But I think isn't he being a little bit foolish, saying, does he really think that history will remember him as having stood next to Blackbeard as an equal? I don't think that's the way that story would be told. Even if they talked about Jack Rackham being on the ship with him, it would be like, hey, and he had this skinny lackey who happened to get some shit right that day. You know?
I think he's, I joked intoxicated. I think he's a bit intoxicated with this idea. I mean, it's what Anne says. She says, you always want to stand by giants. And there you are.
Sure.
I think that, he told himself a story now that this was going to be Jack and Teach buddy cop, the thing that my fantasy television show is also Jack's fantasy television show is Jack Rackham, Edward Teach buddy cop show, where they are being equals who recognize each other and that they get to go down in history together as buddy cops. Or, buddy pirates, whatever, buddy pirates.
Right.
Oh, it's not realistic.
Right. No,
when
I know.
Is Jack
but
realistic?
It's just even if Teach and Jack completely did respect one another and had that relationship together, it still wouldn't be seen like that. It would still be seen like the skinny, nerdy kid who becomes friends with the quarterback.
Absolutely.
But nobody thinks of them as equals, even if the quarterback is like, no, really, this is my friend, he's legit. It doesn't matter. That's not what the schoolyard's going to say.
No, not at all. He's the skinny, nerdy kid who would way obsess about exactly how his banner would look.
Yes, he is that guy. He is that guy.
He's totally that guy. But you're right, and he takes credit for what Anne he says. But he said, but look, I persuaded him. He's so high on what happened last night in that conversation. Don't get me wrong, love that conversation, but he just doesn't get it. We're agreeing. He doesn't get it. But one thing I wanted to point out about what he said about Teach was when he talked about Teach being brilliant, he says that, he had heard other people dismiss his brilliance because he's strong. But I love it. I love what he said. He said, but the idea that one man can be two things. Mm-hmm. Isn't this really what all of our captains are struggling with?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Just a little moment of me, loving Teach. Maybe he's kind of perfect.
Sure.
He's just not as conflicted as our other guys. He seems to be pretty much just inhabiting his self. Well, for now. and then he'll be dead.
Jeez, Daphne.
Sorry. I can't help it. I'm so sad. I know. Now I feel like I'm just like talking so that we don't have to get to that part. Okay. All right. So they go over to the sloop.
Which just looks so tiny.
It does.
Like, it seems impossible for them to lose. It seems so impossible. It makes me wonder why Jack looks so nervous. Of course, it turns out he had every right to be.
He had every right to be.
But,
well, they did just see how smart Woods Rogers is. I mean, I actually feel the opposite. I feel like, why weren't they being more careful? Like, they had just experienced a really, really smart tactical move from Woods Rogers. Mm-hmm. And maybe they were fooled because for the same reason that Eleanor was. Maybe they thought that Rogers was just working on emotion now and not being smart.
Sure.
I kind of wanted them to just sink the damn ship and not go over there. I'm just...
Yeah. That's exactly what I thought. I was like, why didn't they just sink it?
Right. Exactly.
But revenge is why. It's that same thing that drove Rogers himself to board that boat and kill the captain and then everyone one at a time. It was that revenge.
Right. That's the only answer that I can come up with, is that they wanted the same thing. They wanted to demonstrate their power. It wasn't enough just to have him die in a sunken ship. They wanted to grab Rogers, and that was their failing. And remember, this goes back to the first episode when Beringer talks about revenge being a motivator, and Rogers says, I'll take revenge.
Yep. Oh,
now we know to what extent Rogers understands revenge as a motivation. And again,
absolutely.
We're going to get to the keel holding very soon. I think it trips everyone up here. I really do. I think this is the thing that trips everyone up, is this wanting to demonstrate your power because you're motivated by revenge. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this obviously trips them up. This does not go in their favor.
Right.
Now we'll get to it. Okay, so... Right, we have Rogers very much being nonchalant, and now I think this is his pirate theater to some extent. I mean, partly I think it's his deep down darkness, and partly I think it's his pirate theater of being so calm. Right before they put the what's it called? The hood over Teach's face, he actually smiles.
Yeah.
Like, these two are having a war of will throughout this whole thing.
Well, I would like to talk for a moment before we go straight to that about the fight when the Vanguard gets on board the ship, and particularly the fight between Woods Rogers and Blackbeard. Mm-hmm. I really did not like the cinematography here.
Okay. I was going to bring that up in the final fight.
Yeah,
definitely.
There are 3 scenes in this episode where the cinematography throws me out because it's so modern. Mm-hmm. I suddenly feel like I'm watching... like, there was a time when they're searching the wrecks for silver where I feel like I'm suddenly watching Cops. I'm like, what just happened? Yeah, like it's...
I'm so glad you're articulating what I was like mostly just going, this isn't working for me, but I couldn't figure out why.
Why isn't this working?
Right.
Yeah. And this one had a lot of cutaways. Mm-hmm. It was very hard to follow the choreography of the fight. Mm-hmm. It was hard to know... I think it would have been more effective for me if I had seen... more easily the fight between Rogers and Teach. Mm-hmm. And even when he got stabbed, it was confusing how many times. It was confusing. I mean, I watched it twice. Mm-hmm. I know you've seen it a million times, but, I try to still be the fresh perspective. So I watched it twice. And both times I felt like it was just really difficult to follow. And there were a few times, like there's at least once where we're just looking basically at Teach's boots. Mm-hmm. I don't know why or what that's supposed to do for us to pull us into the fight, but it didn't. It did not pull me into the action. It just became confusing for me.
I'm so glad.
Like, remember when Saving Private Ryan came out and then suddenly everybody was doing shaky cams
right.
And dust blowing up and stuff, and we're like, oh, I'm done with this. So it was like a new version of it just felt like such a modern stylistic choice that I couldn't, it threw me out of the story and it became style.
I'm so glad that you brought up, like, because the term that, like, the word that kept coming to my mind whenever during this fight scene and the last fight scene was thin. and I couldn't figure out why. Like, I just felt
Thin. Interesting.
like there was some tone to the visuals that, like, I feel like the fight scenes generally in Black Sails are so rich.
Huh.
And again, I'm not good at this. This is not an aspect of talking about television that I'm good at, about figuring out why a fight scene would feel that way to me, or cinematography.
Sure.
I mean, it's funny. I'm a visual artist. I should be able to, like, be better at this.
Well, this is very different
It's
from
very
creating
different,
jewelry, though.
right? It's very different than what I do. But I just kept, like, there was. It didn't have a richness. It almost had like a tinniness to it. I'm using wrong words, but it's the words that came to me. Like that there was something, like, I feel like usually, and maybe you're right about the cuts. Like, usually in the fight scenes, I really feel like I'm inside of it, but not in a way, not in an aggressive way. Like, we're still watching from the outside.
But maybe this felt like spectacle.
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I still haven't quite.
Just a little less authentic.
It did feel very not authentic. I mean, it just didn't feel like. I mean, I usually, and again, I've said this in past episodes, I'm not a big fight choreography person, and yet Black Sails usually totally engages me on that front.
Well, and gosh, the battle for the beach was so wonderfully done.
So wonderfully done. So I'm not good at articulating how this didn't work for me, but it didn't. Right. So, but you're articulating it very well. So thank you. That's great.
You're welcome, I suppose. Sure. Yeah.
So when we get to the point where things are all kind of lost, and Jack's been watching it, and then he strikes the colors, and Teach's face, when it was like, it wasn't being captured that broke Teach. It was, I mean, he wasn't broken because he's badass he is. Right. You got to give the man that. Like, this is horrible what happens to him, and
I'll give him that.
Yeah. But the look on his face of defeat when he sees that Jack struck the colors, and so let's talk about that. I mean, I know why I think Jack struck the colors. I don't think it was a tactical move, and Jack is a good tactician. We know this. I think this was because of Anne.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He was trying to protect. I mean, I would even argue both of them, but definitely.
Right. I think this was a last-ditch effort. He was just trying to basically keep them from just killing the whole vanguard, which included.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes,
so this, again, this goes back to love. I mean, this was Jack.
Sure, of course.
And it's interesting because
He'll
Jack
always ultimately choose Anne, I think.
He will ultimately. Like, we just saw him being a total ass and not thinking about Anne and not taking her into account in his whole thing about his famous future, his famous place in history next to Teach. But when it comes down to it, he will always choose Anne.
It's true, because he could have, gosh, my supervillain side is really coming out again. But he could have decided, you know what, I'll just sink this effing sloop right now.
Right, sure. There were a lot of things he
could have done.
He could have sailed away, and then he would have at least, again, like both he and Teach said in the first episode of season 4, there's a point where you just cut your losses and sail away, because then at least you kept part of your crew and your ship. That would have been the smart thing for Jack to do, is just say, okay, Vanguard, sorry.
Right.
Sorry this didn't work out for you, but I'm cutting my losses. Right. But he didn't do that. He struck his colors, and which means that we end up in this situation where everyone's on the ship. Here we go. We're there, Liz. We're at the keyhauling. So,
okay.
Would you like me to go through the parts? I broke it down into the 3 parts of the
first, I would just want to say that, like, from watching it the first time, the first keel haul, I had no idea what was going on. Right. When he came back up out of the water, first of all, again with the cinematography, I did not understand the switching from one side of the ship to the other. Right. Did you see it?
Maybe not. I don't remember.
Time?
I was right. So I think I was very caught up in trying to figure out why he looked like he did when he came up.
Exactly. So was I, which means that, they lost it somehow in the cinematography. They changed the shot, and they gave us this big overhead crane shot, and it showed, and this is what they were trying to do, it showed Rogers walking to the other side of the ship, but because they had changed our perspective and our point of view, I mean, he could have been doing anything. I just lost it. Right. I don't know. I lost that that Teach came up on the other side. It was too many cutaways.
Well, they definitely make up for it in the second one.
Oh yeah. No, eventually it becomes very clear what is happening. Yeah. But I did not understand what was going on. And when he did come back up out of the water, I was like, why is he so tattered?
Right.
Were there sharks? Do they know?
Right. I was also confused. Well, and I want to point out that this is horrifyingly totally a historical thing. So everyone in the story, all the pirates,
right?
Everyone
they all know exactly what's going on.
They all knew exactly what was going on. Okay, but the thing I want to talk about this struggle of wills between Teach and Rogers here, because they're both doing theater to some extent. Poor Teach. Oh, my dear Teach, my sentimental, adorable giant pirate. Sorry.
Were you going to be his 10th wife?
I want to be his 10th wife. No, I don't, but I love him. I would be his adopted daughter. To take the place of Vane. That's what I would. Okay. I don't know what I would do.
Right,
I just love him. Just let me be in my love of Teach.
You just love him. Sure.
I just love him. I have no idea what I would be in relation to Teach, but I love him and I'm sad. But what's interesting here is Rogers. So Rogers, we know he established with us whether you think he was going to kill the whole crew or not. We know that he was going to make a demonstration of his revenge and for them trying to kill Eleanor. And so he starts out doing that super well. Like he's staring at Teach and he's super nonchalant. That hand motion made me want to kill him, where he's just like, you just see his hand. That's a good bit of cinematography as far as I'm concerned. You just see his hand and he just does a slight motion to start the process. Mm-hmm. They start this thing, and then we see Teach, not, again, you and I both, and I'm assuming other watchers didn't quite understand what was going on. Some of our listeners who are super pirate history people.
Yeah, some people probably went straight to it, knew exactly what was happening. Sure.
Looking at you, Megan, you definitely knew what was going on, but we didn't. But we did. We see Teach in tatters, and he looks horrible, but he does sit up. And the first time when Teach, kind of manages to get himself back into a sitting position, Rogers says again, very quietly, very nonchalantly, he's still doing that. I'm totally mellow about this horrible thing I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And then he looks at Jack and he gives him this smug look. And this is what made me think about the carriage scene, that it was like the last time we saw the two of them, we so had this sense of like them just like kind of doing banter and this and that. Jack's someone we knew already. We knew Jack well. We loved Jack.
Right.
We knew him for his failings and for the things that we find adorable. And we, back then, when the two of them were sparring, verbal sparring, we thought that they were like kind of like the same guy, kind of. But one of them was a little bit more privileged and it ended up governor. And this is the moment when he looks over at Jack and he gives him this kind of nod of his head and this smug look. And I'm just like, shit. This is when we understand that those guys were never the same.
Yeah.
Again, Jack can kill people, but this is a very different kind of person than Jack. Okay, so the next time when he says again, very nonchalantly, that's when we get the full view. And oh my God, I did not need to see that. I'm sorry. I mean, again, no. I guess I did need to see it because I needed to understand.
Because
it's true.
We didn't understand what was happening. Sure.
Again, I'm a person who lives by the sea. I've spent a lot of time in boats. Like the idea of a bottom of a ship, a whole ship. I mean, a giant ship of barnacles. Like barnacles are the worst thing. They are so horrible. They are so dangerous. You touch a barnacle and you get a giant cut. The idea. I mean, maybe this is part of why this was so hard for me, because I've just spent a lot of time around barnacles. Mm-hmm. The idea of being scraped along the bottom of a ship full of barnacles is so horrifying to me. Like, I was honestly, the first time I watched this, sorry I had eaten anything that day. It's really
very
hard.
Gruesome.
It's very gruesome.
Very visceral and graphic.
Yeah.
I personally think it was probably over the line.
I do too. I agree. I think they went a tad bit too far. I don't know. Again, I don't.
It's just that there was so much time on it. And I understand that. Like, I understand the point that they were driving home again about the horrors of what is supposed to be civilization. I understand, but I've been watching this show for a long time. But I don't need so much of it so visually, so gruesome. It was just, I just would have preferred it to be dialed down a bit.
You did need to be completely broken, and that is what this scene is about.
Sure.
Yeah, I have very mixed feelings about this because, again, you and I have spent a lot of time loving Rogers. You and I, specifically, maybe more than the average viewer, needed to be broken.
I wonder if I'm rewriting this because now I don't remember loving Rogers. I just remember liking him quite a lot.
No. I could play you back stuff you said about Rogers.
I'm sure. Damn it.
But that's the thing. It is a variation. Again, I agree with you. I think this went a little too far. This is not the thing we always say about Black Sails, where the violence never goes beyond what's needed for the sake of the story and the characters. I do think this went a tad bit over.
Yeah, went over the line a little.
Right. But you and I in particular, with our love of Rogers, again, it was always like, we always were like joking, like, oh, we're supposed to hate him, but we love him. But we did love him.
Yeah, sure.
We needed to be broken of that. And again, it's that thing that Black Sails does, that it takes, and a thing that I love about Black Sails, that Black Sails takes you to places emotionally that you didn't expect, and then makes you question, makes you investigate your own feelings. Why did I like this? Why is this horrifying? Why am I rooting for the thing that I'm not supposed to be? Like, again, I feel like this episode was really rough on us in a way, in a different way. I mean, Black Sails has never been easy on our spirits or our hearts.
Sure.
I feel like the tone of this episode did that in a different way than is what I love about the show. But part of it is still in the spirit. Okay, so let's continue now with our watching the development of Rogers. And that's not me avoiding the whole gruesomeness. Okay. This is actually, interesting content here. Okay, so we have the second one, like super, super horrible. We're all, I mean, I think Rogers thinks, Weir thinks the second time Teach comes out of the water, we are positive he's dead. Like, he, prods him with his foot. And then he's still casual. He's still very, I think, deliberately casual. He nods his head over towards Jack, and he says, him next. I so believed him. I was like, holy shit.
I was ready to see Jack Keelhauled.
I know. Yeah. I was like, holy
I mean, I wasn't ready to, but I was sure that was going to happen.
I was positive. I was like, holy shit, they're going to kill Teach and Jack in the same episode, and how will I survive this?
I did not think that they were going to kill Jack. I thought that they were just going to Keelhaul him maybe once. Oh, God. And just as torture. Right. And then, because I always assumed they were going to bring people back to Nassau to tell the tale. And so if you have Teach Keelhauled and dead, if you have Jack Keelhauled just the once and brought back bleeding and awful, and then
you are
telling the tale.
You are a supervillain this episode.
I am kind of a supervillain. I'm wasted on podcasting.
I'm just like all heart and emotion, and Liz is like, let me see how this would be like most effective.
Most effective. The most effective way to terrorize these people.
Oh, okay.
Well, you know.
Okay, so again, Roger's still casual with his him next, but Teach, God bless that man, I love him. He coughs a little bit, and he actually raises his head.
He does.
He is so defiant. And then this is when Roger starts to lose his cool, and this is where I'm saying that Teach won. Roger's he's just like pissed, and he's not nonchalant anymore. He's just like, again. Because he's like,
it's true.
He's like, he's losing it. And then when he looks at Jack this time, he's not smug. He's pissed. That's it.
True.
Rogers has lost his cool. And in my eyes, in the world of pirate theater, when he's lost his cool, I mean, he's going to kill Teach. That was clear. Teach knew from the minute they put that hood on his head that he was going to die. But this is the moment when Teach actually... didn't win the war, obviously, because he's dead. But but he's winning that battle. And then they do it again. And this time, all the whole crew stands up. We hear the scraping. We know what the scraping means this time. We heard it the first time.
Now. Mm-hmm.
This time, they don't need to show it to us. We hear it.
Right.
We can visualize it. And this time, oh God, I mean, he just looks inhuman when he comes out. And yet, he can't raise his head anymore. But he still moves his eyes. He still looks up at Rogers. And that's when Rogers shoots him in the head.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the moment that Rogers lost in my eyes. Because we know that Rogers was going to, at least, even if your argument is true that he wasn't going to do it with the whole crew, although I still argue that he was, because he said that he feels the same way and he did it with the whole crew of that Spanish galleon, which can't be fewer people. A whole Spanish galleon can't be fewer people than that pirate crew. But when he shoots Teach in the head and then says, we're going back to Nassau, that's when Teach won. This is an example of emotion leading to wanting to demonstrate power and having it backfire.
Well, why do you think that he shot Teach in the head?
He just couldn't deal with it anymore. He was just so pissed off. He just wanted Teach to die at this point.
Oh, see? I have to disagree with you
there.
Okay,
tell me what you think.
I think the other side of Rogers, I think the light and dark side have been fighting, and I think he just couldn't do it anymore. I think it was mercy. And then I think he had to get out and off that deck and out of the sight of his men. And yeah, I think it was a mercy killing. I think he just couldn't do it anymore.
I like that version better. It still goes with my basic thesis that Teach won.
Sure. I don't. Okay, I guess Teach won over the dark side of Rogers. Yep. Okay, sure.
Well, Teach won over the idea of making revenge into theater. Because whatever influenced Rogers, whether it's his light side, I mean, again, I'd like to think that. I'd like to think that Rogers, I guess you're seeing a more optimistic version of Rogers than I am. And I'd like that.
I might be wrong.
No.
I might be wrong, but that is what I saw.
I think that would be more interesting and definitely in line with the way Black Sails deals with duality. Like, if yes. Rogers, I would like it better if Rogers is still having some sort of battle between the two sides of his face, between his the side that we love and the pirate side, which now is the dark side. It's funny because I used to think of the pirate side as maybe a side that I could relate to, and now
nope.
No, well, but again, we saw a whole lot of the not scarred side when he was talking about doing horrible things.
We did.
So maybe
we sure did.
So maybe it's the civilized side. Who knows? I mean, it's just very hard to parse right now.
Yes.
And I think Rogers is, and I think one of the aspects of this episode that I love is that, you know that I've said throughout Fathoms Deep, I love those moments where this show says, okay, you got comfortable, let's make you uncomfortable again. Because those are the moments where we really have to kind of dig into our own emotional, sense of things and our own belief systems and our own, just every time, like Nedlo was one of my favorite things in that. Like, I loved that, that we'd gotten really comfortable with everything, and then they're like, "Oh, let's shake it up for you. You think you know what's going on, and now we're just gonna fuck with you, and you need to start readjusting and rethinking."
Right.
So I would love that if what happens now is that we need to go through this process with Rogers of duality and figuring out who he is. That would be amazing. And it would make a lot of sense because I do still believe that he has a lot of parallels with Flint.
Yeah, he definitely does.
So
yeah, in fact, I've never seen those parallels as strongly as I do
in this episode
with this and in this episode for sure.
Which is interesting because Flint is actually I'm about to argue that Flint is the sanest he's ever been in this episode.
I think that's pretty darn close to the truth.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe Rogers and Flint like live in some sort of like scales world where one of them has to be like, when one of them is super sane, the other one has to be kind of batshit crazy, and then like. But again, I still stand by whatever version of Rogers we're going to get in the next episode, and I'm really looking forward. Maybe is not the right word. I'm anticipating. I'm interested in. I'm looking for words and I'm not finding them. Great podcasting skill. I'm interested to see what we're going to get. But again, I think in this whole theme of emotion leading you to strong demonstrations of power backfiring, I think that is definitely what happened here. But, I would trade all of that for still having Teach. But,
right.
I don't get my wishes. I don't get my, again, we did season 4 wishes. I don't get mine. I hope a lot of our listeners get theirs, but I did not get mine. I got very little Teach and Jack, and now it's done.
It was really good Teach and Jack, though, you have to admit.
Glorious Teach and Jack. I mean, all 3 episodes actually were glorious. Yes. I am thankful for the Teach and Jack that I got.
Sure.
And I'm sure that every one of those scenes will now in rewatches be a million times more meaningful to me because I will understand how little I got of it. So thank you, Black Sails.
Thanks, I guess.
Okay. Let's move on to Nassau now.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. Can I just say my pre-summary of these parts is Max is awesome. Eleanor, good to have you back. We like this Eleanor. And Berenger, what the fuck?
Sure.
But you're going to die, so it's okay.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah.
That's my summary of this portion of our discussion. Okay, so we start with Eleanor on her ship wanting to go. We find out that Eleanor can't leave, so...
That she can't leave, yeah. And that was exciting when it's like, soldiers are needed on shore. I was like, what? Right. What's happening? So that part was interesting.
This also relates to our game, so everyone who played our game, if you said no, Eleanor will not get away, not at all for the reasons
she didn't get out of the bay.
Right, not for the reasons we anticipated, but the answer is no. Okay. So again, I have this... In our next scene with Max, I have a moment that I don't know if it's intentional, but I have to bring it up because it was so striking to me. When we see Max in bed before she's taken by the soldiers,
right?
We see we see dust in the air floating around.
Oh,
and it just was so striking to me. I want to bring this to the season finale of season 2. That speech that you love so much of Flint's, where he says...
Oh, yes.
Again, I don't know if this is intentional, but it was so striking to me, and it made me think of this, so I'm just going to read it, and whether it's a connection they were trying to make or not, I don't really care, because it worked for me.
Sure.
So Flint said, when he's talking about there being no Guthries left in Nassau, he says, one gets used to a state of affairs for such a long time. It's easy to forget that they are all just transitions, specks of dust suspended in the air until a strong enough gust comes along and rearranges everything.
Wow. Yep.
And that,
if it wasn't on purpose, it
works anyway, right?
What did they say? Synchronicity? Yes.
Right. So it's either intentional or like super happy accident that just really stood out for me.
Yeah.
Because we see this peaceful, Max in bed with some woman. We don't even see her face.
Right. Which is, I feel like that's kind of a weird way to fall asleep, but what do I know?
Yeah, the whole head to toe thing.
Yeah.
No, I actually have something to say about it. I mean, I think that relates to the conversation that Max said with Mapleton. Like that Mapleton had advised her to basically get her sexual satisfaction from people without emotional connection.
Emotional attachment,
yeah.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it actually relates to that, but...
Probably so,
yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? It does make her seem more alone.
Right, exactly. To just have like legs and a butt, but not actually a person.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, so this just kind of worked for me. The idea that there was this dust kind of like peacefully, in the air in this room until suddenly that door opens and these soldiers come in to get her. And then, did you notice where she was taken? Where Berenger was waiting for her?
Was that Eleanor's old office?
That's Eleanor's old office.
That's what I thought.
Which is Maxwell's
office.
office.
And I love the fear on Max's face when they told her to get dressed.
Absolutely. Oh, God. Yeah. Oh, my God. I mean, yeah, Max in this episode. Right. That she's just looking at us and we see the fear. They don't see the fear.
Yeah,
we
they
see
can't see it behind her. She's hiding her face from them, but we get to see just how unsettled she is by this.
Right. She knows.
They saw the show of strength when she said, what are you doing? Get the fuck out of here or whatever.
Right.
Yeah,
no, she is.
But on her face.
She is through all of these scenes, just like an amazing combination of show of strength, but also ways of showing fear that we can read. Exactly. Yes. So she's in Eleanor's old office, in her old office, and Berenger is sitting in that fucking chair.
Yep. Oh,
right? Yep. That fucking chair. It's a dangerous place to sit. So that's when he brings up the scout who saw her, and she tries to defend herself to no avail. And, and that's when they say it's treason. And I was so afraid. Were you afraid for Max? I was so afraid for Max in this episode.
I was sure they were going to hang Max at the end of the episode. And then I was sure that they were going to kill Hall Jack. And I was just so grateful to have the two of them okay that I really couldn't be that broken up about Teach. Sorry.
It's okay.
I know that you were. You had enough pain and sorrow for both of us, I feel like.
I think I have enough pain and sorrow for the whole fandom, to be honest.
Yep. I have to admit that Berenger, there were things about this scene that were almost comical to me. When Berenger said that he saw her with a one-legged man, and they said, and I assume the one-legged man was Long John Silver. I actually laughed. I was like, you can't prove it. Can't prove it. But I have to say, when he asked, why did you not inform me of the meeting before the fact? Yeah, though. Why not? That just seems like, why not cover your ass there, Max?
Right. We're going to talk about that when she gets to Eleanor. I mean, I think she explains that really well in a little bit.
She does, but I understand what she's saying, but it's still not smart.
See, I disagree. I think it's super smart.
You disagree? Okay. All right. Well, then we'll get to that.
Yeah,
then
we'll get to the conversation with her and Eleanor. And again, this goes to this whole thing about power perceived and power not perceived.
Sure.
Hold on to that thought. We'll have that argument in a minute.
Berenger did get a new level of threatening, I suppose, when he said the governor is not here.
Right.
I am.
Oh,
here.
yeah. No, he's terrifying. And again, Max in the last episode was already pretty clear about that. She knew what he was capable of. Okay, so the next time we see someone in this grouping is we see Featherstone freaking out. And I love this scene so much where Adele's just like, calm the fuck down. I love Adele. I've said this before.
Yeah.
I love Adele a million times more in this episode.
Great. Nope. Yep. She's great.
So Featherstone's freaking out and Adele's just like, shut the fuck up. I mean, she didn't say that, but.
She didn't, but yeah. She shows how much she knows Max, that's for sure.
Exactly. So this is what I wanted to bring this to. I love this. She's so positive that Max will not turn them in. And this is what I love. And she says she doesn't. He's like, how do you know this? And she's like, she doesn't like when her friends are being threatened. And we just talked about Anne and her metamorphosis.
Yeah.
I am so clear on this. This is because, remember, Adele was the one who was like, be afraid of her. Let's get rid of her. And Max was like, absolutely not. I will not hear of it. And Adele was the person she was always talking about. And I think this is the moment where we see how much Adele understands Max, because she saw how Max was loyal to Anne.
Yeah.
And this is when Adele understood that Max is a good friend, that Max is someone you can depend on.
She is loyal.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
what was the other thing she said about her? That she doesn't like to be pushed around.
She doesn't like to be pushed around, and that's true. And
which I like that.
I know, because we've seen a bit of Max being pushed around this season, and I did not like it. And I'm really happy that she's just like, nope, won't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I have my hopes and dreams about Max in this season. I feel like this episode was really a step in the right direction. That what we had seen in the first 2 episodes was Max compromising herself to an extent that we had never seen before for the sake of staying within civilization.
Mm-hmm.
This may be a moment where Max is just like, fuck it. We'll see. I mean, she's just being the most moral person. I don't know. She's trying so hard to have civilization be what she envisioned it to be and not what it's being.
Yeah. Well.
Right.
Yeah.
But I also one more moment of loving Adele. I love that she says to Featherstone, you know what we should be doing right now? We should be figuring out how we can help her.
Right.
So that makes me happy. All right. Then we get into the second scene where we see Berenger and Max together.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to bring up something. So he's like listening to her, the death toll of since she didn't give in her informants.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, Long John Silver murdered one of my men, 4 of yours, and murdered a family of 3 on the Underhill estate, including an 8-year-old girl. Who killed the Underhills?
Well, that was...
Flint's people didn't. Like, did Billy's people... Like, how does Berenger even know this? Did the militia kill them? Did Billy's people kill them? Like, they were all... Like, Underhill was shot, but I understood from what a lot of our listeners said, like, that he was alive when Flint and Maddie left.
See, now I just kind of took that as real because I didn't remember. I just kind of took for granted that they had been killed in that skirmish that happened there, regardless of by whom.
We did not see that.
Because everything is attributed to Silver. But yeah, I didn't realize that.
Right, and Flint says later that Billy basically is in possession of the Underhill estate. So I'm just not really sure. Like, did Billy's people kill the Underhills? Is Berenger just randomly saying this? Also an option. Like, Berenger may know that the Underhill estate is in pirate hands, so maybe he's just randomly saying that. I was just like, I'm not sure what to make of that.
Interesting.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So then they have this thing where he's like, tell me your sources. And Max is giving.
She is so cool in the face of this pressure.
Yes.
And he is really, he's intimidating.
He's terrifying.
And she is just so cool under pressure.
She's amazing. I mean, she is. The thing I love is that she's being so firm in both of her scenes with him. She's being so firm. And yet you can see her chest. She's breathing so hard. I mean, she's just...
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's just like, we know Max. We know what Max looks like most of the time. Right. Like, we know she's terrified.
Yes. And she should be. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she should be. And yet she totally holds her own. And I've never been happier to see Eleanor than when Eleanor...
Me too, than when she came into that room. I know. I thought the exact same thing. I'd never been happier to see Eleanor.
I know.
Yep. And the relief and... The relief and something else that happens on Max's face, which is maybe just an acknowledgement of the irony of the situation.
Thank you. Right?
Yeah.
So many levels of irony going on from this point on here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So, the next scene is Eleanor's trying to convince Berenger not to kill Max.
Yeah.
And then Berenger, I feel like he's using I didn't look it up, but he's using almost the identical language that she used to Max, that Eleanor used to Max about hanging Vane. He's saying, he's basically saying, if the governor comes back and he has questions, like she said when the governor basically isn't sick anymore and has questions.
Right.
I'll be able to answer them. And then he's like, he just does not get Eleanor, I think is really,
no.
I mean, again, she said she's contorted herself into this other shape. So she's been pretending to be someone other than herself.
Fair. Yeah, sure.
But then he's like, look, whatever, I'll deal with the governor. And then he's like, I'm so sorry that you missed your trip. And he's just not getting her at all. And I was so happy. It's so funny. Like, Eleanor then gives him a look that had she given him that look in season 1, we would have been like, oh, come on, Eleanor, stop being that person. I was so happy for her to give him one of those
withering Eleanor
exactly looks. I was so psyched. I was like, thank goodness there's like some element of Eleanor still in there of just like, oh, give me the fucking break, dude.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, and now we have the Eleanor and Max conversation, and I'm 100% on Max's side, just like I've been 100% on Max's side in her conversations with Eleanor since the end of season 3, and she's bringing it all back. So Eleanor's like, what were you doing? Why didn't you report the law? And Max says, I didn't fail. I refused. And she says, last time the law, and she's like, basically like, I mean you, Eleanor, got a pirate of this stature, it yielded the following: anger and hostility, which led to purges and resistance.
Yeah.
And she's like, I will not start that cycle again. And she's right. And Eleanor was the one who started that cycle the first time. And she's being very diplomatic, Max is.
Oh, I didn't think she was being diplomatic. I thought, yeah.
Fine.
I mean, you could put it that way, but...
Fine. You know what? Diplomatic.
A little passive-aggressive. It was a little bit of a slap in the face, which is fine.
Oh, but totally deserved. I mean,
that's what I mean by what I said, which is fine. It was totally deserved.
Right.
But I don't think that she was being diplomatic. Yeah.
Fair. Okay, fine. I don't think I needed diplomatic. I needed what the fuck, lady? You basically created this whole world that we're living in right now of horrible political repression. Perhaps a different approach might be called for.
Perhaps.
So that's why I'm saying that I think that Max was being smart. I think there's no way. I mean, she went in with 6 men. She tried to take 2 men. She just... How could you anticipate the Israel hands factor?
Okay, you can't anticipate the Israel hands factor. But again, underestimating Long John Silver?
Fair. That's true. That's true.
I mean, she's known him from the get-go. She knows...
Okay.
I don't know.
She should have maybe brought 10 men. Had she brought 10 men, she would have done her plan.
And I do think...
I mean, Israel Hands is badass, but he's not superhuman.
Yeah. But did she really think she was going to be able to apprehend him and bring him in? And if she did, if that was truly her endgame, why didn't she bring Berenger in on that?
Because Berenger would have made theater of it. He would have done exactly the thing that Eleanor... But once she apprehended him,
what was she going to do with him?
She said that she was going to send him away. She's got money. She's got power. She could have totally just sent him on a ship somewhere.
I don't know. That just seems awfully ambitious for Max. And I mean ambitious in just a hubris folly way.
No, it might have been one of Max's hubris moments. I mean...
Yeah.
She definitely shares with Silver that arrogance of smart people.
Sure.
I still think I'm totally on her side. Like, had she gone to Berenger would have done exactly the thing she said. He would have taken a pirate of that stature. I mean, imagine you saw the theater he was doing with just random pirates. Imagine what he would have done with John Silver, who had become a rallying point. It would have been Vane all over again.
Yeah.
I mean, she was right in her intention. She may have not been so smart in the execution.
Right.
She didn't know about Israel Hands. All she knew is that she was meeting Silver.
Yeah.
Who's a one-legged guy. I mean, again.
6 guys should be enough. Okay, fair.
No offense, Silver. We're about to get to his amazing horse dismount. He is
his amazing horse dismount.
Okay, which I'm okay with preempting because it deserves
Holy
talking
smokes.
about. I know, right?
No, that was awesome.
I know.
Yeah.
John Silver, you are a badass.
Pretty much a badass. Yeah.
Ultimately, I don't know. I definitely feel like Max is in the right here. Max is the voice of, again, I'm just going to harp on this whole power perceived versus not power perceived. Should I quickly read what she said in the end of season 2?
Sure, go ahead.
When Eleanor was taken to England and Max was buying up, pretty much every business in Nassau, Fraser was being a little scornful of her. And she said, I have no interest in ruling the way Eleanor does. She said, power is most effective when it's least perceived. And we've talked about this a lot. Not the most democratic of ideas, but...
No, right.
But at the same time, super effective. And
Very effective,
I think that this whole episode is an argument in her favor. Everyone's trying to like be super showy about their power. Not working out for them so much. So I think that, you know, she pretty much convinced Eleanor. Finally.
Right.
You know, had this worked back in the end of season 3, we'd be in a very different place right now than we are. Had she managed to convince Eleanor back then that that making theater of punishing pirates and revenge
was a bad idea and will only incite rebellion. Sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, even more now than even then, I'm kind of like, Eleanor, why didn't you listen to Max? Max is she's clever, that one.
It's true. Yep.
So now Eleanor is trying to convince Berenger. And first of all, Berenger gets that black spot.
Yes.
And chooses to read the message out
Which
to the
so
crowd.
Arrogant, right? Such hubris.
I know.
So arrogant.
I know.
That
man
really is just antagonizing them now. And then calling them all fucking cowards?
I know. He's an ass.
What are you doing? What are you trying to do?
Well, he explains it eventually. Okay, well, first...
Right, control that no one can see makes for no demonstration at all.
Yep. Exactly.
Which is the opposite of Max's... Yeah, so he and Max are just at opposite ends of what you do with power and what power and control means.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty much at opposite ends of everything, but yes.
Pretty much everything, sure.
Right,
sure,
so,
yeah.
right, and Eleanor even gave him... She says, don't cancel the hangings. Cancel the theater.
The spectacle of it, the theater. Yeah, sure.
And what does she say to him? She says, you don't need to demonstrate your fearsomeness. The last time we heard the word fearsomeness was back in episode 7 of season 3 when they're talking. Sorry, I know I'm being total geek.
No, it's okay. I'm impressed. Go ahead.
I'm in super pirate geek mode.
Yeah.
The last time we heard that word was when they were talking about spreading the story about Flint's return to Nassau. And Billy says, if you have to explain your fearsomeness to Flint, because he's like, you're a ghost. You know, he's talking about ghost stories.
Right.
And he's like, if you have to show your fearsomeness, you're detracting from it. And that's why Billy convinces Flint to send Silver instead.
Right.
That's the last time we heard the word fearsomeness.
Interesting.
But
Sure, okay.
Eleanor's saying the same thing. She's like, dude, if you have to show your fearsomeness, you've already gone too far.
Right. Yeah.
She's like, they're all afraid of you. They've all been afraid of you.
Wow.
And then she says that amazing thing about antagonizing. She said there's only so much fear men can endure. I just feel like this episode, it's like suddenly Eleanor learned all of the lessons of all of the things she ever did that we didn't like. Like suddenly she's finally got it. She's finally got it. She's finally on Max's side.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if she's on Max's side for everything, but certainly in this, they are aligning and seeing it as wisdom. Yes.
Well, right. She's taking Max's perspective about how to deal with this situation, how to rule, how to... Again, Max isn't a pirate right now. She's trying still to... I mean, that's the crazy thing, is that she and Berenger actually, well, maybe. In theory, she and Berenger have the same goal. I mean, I think ultimately Berenger's goal, like she said in the last episode, is that Berenger's one of those people whose identity is more caught up in this battle than his wanting for it to end.
Yeah.
Max is a person who actually would like for this to all work out. She wants a stable Nassau. And Eleanor's finally listening to her. So she gives Berenger that map and says, okay, you could just end this quietly. What does she say? Quietly and definitively.
Yes.
Right? Wouldn't that be
Right.
great?
But wouldn't that be not black sails?
Wouldn't that be not? Well, wouldn't that, especially not this episode where people
Yeah.
want to make a show of their power.
Yes. I want to show their power.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, let's get to the good part now. Let's get to the pirate resistance.
Okay. Yeah.
I love Maddie and Flint in Coalition a lot.
Yes.
So they have, I'm assuming, one of Maddie's people who is, freaking out, and Maddie's just like, hey, pirates fought against us, but pirates also fought with us. Right?
And she's so amazing. Yeah. And telling them that our alliance will stand.
I know.
She's amazing.
She is amazing. I know we don't get as much Maddie as I feel like in past episodes, but the Maddie we get is
so good.
So then they're walking and planning, and she thanks Flint for standing up with her, and he's just like, that was the right thing to do. I mean,
no, that was the best thing.
That
for
was
me.
the best thing to do. Right. That's what he meant. That was the right. But then he says a thing that I adore. She's like, will this thing work? And he says, I'm going to quote him, if no one remembers a time before there was an England, then no one can imagine a time after.
Yeah.
The empire survives in part because we believe its survival to be inevitable.
Now, can you remind me, I feel like, was it just you and I, or was it the show that has used the word inevitable?
Ooh, good question. That's not one of the words that stuck out for me to research today.
All right. It may have been just something that you and I said, the inevitability of or something. But
no,
okay.
no. That sounds very much like a word that Black Sails would have used over and over again.
Right.
The thing I love about this is, I mean, it's truth. I mean, he's basically laying out what ended up being the American Revolution. He says,
yes, he absolutely is.
Right.
And that's the first thing I thought of course, because how far off are we in years?
We're quite a bit, but I have read,
like
and I'm not an expert
yet,
of this, but I read in some of the random bits of history about the pirates that I read. There were some claims that actually the historical republic of pirates was a bit of an inspiration to revolutionaries in the colonies.
Yeah.
Again, there was not, from what I understand, this coalition between formerly enslaved people and pirates, although both of those things existed. So there was actually a pirate republic. There were absolutely groups of formerly enslaved people who revolted against England and other colonial powers. So those two things did exist, and those two things were, I believe, very inspiring to people in the colonies. So this is all related.
Yeah, definitely.
What I thought was interesting is that he's basically saying that also the empire is a story, that the empire sustains itself through what I called now empire theater. Like, this is the theater of the empire, that it is forever and that it will be forever. And then he says, if we expose the illusion, we could inspire a revolt across the New World. And this was the tie-in then to the revolution.
To the Revolutionary War, absolutely.
Which is essentially what the Revolutionary War did in what became the United States, became an inspiration to other parts of the empire. So that's pretty cool. Okay, now we get the little tidbit that Maddie says. And this is, I love this on many levels. And will you bear with me for a second while I go through them?
Yes, I will.
One of them is a gift from John Steinberg. Okay, Maddie says to Flint then, too much sanity may be madness, and the maddest of all, to see life as it is and not as it should be. So my first response to this is that I felt like this was a callback to what Roger said about pirates. Again, in the carriage scene. I'm going to keep, like, a lot of this goes back to the carriage scene. He says about the pirates, it's fascinating to me how stubbornly you people expect the unlikeliest of outcomes, because you prefer them. Expect the world to become what you want it to be, despite all available evidence and experience to the contrary. So these two things, they're not exactly the same thing, but they relate to each other in the idea of the tension between people who accept the world as it is and people who envision the world as it could be.
Right.
And civilization, in the form of Rogers in that carriage, is firmly on the side of accepting the world as it is.
As it is.
Which totally relates to what Flint just said about the empire basically sustains itself on this myth that it will always sustain itself.
Right. Interesting.
And Maddie gives this quote that shows that she too is a dreamer like Flint. That the sane thing, the mad thing, is to see life only as it is versus seeing life as it should be.
Right.
But the bonus of this moment is that is a quote from Don Quixote.
Oh, really?
That's
nice. Don Quixote. Oh,
so
okay.
this is our bonus, and maybe I would have looked it up, and maybe I wouldn't have. Sometimes I do look up quotes that sound like quotes, but this is our gift from John Steinberg. Thank you, John. This is from Don Quixote. So, unintentionally, again, remember Maddie's library. This is a well-read woman.
Oh,
But unintentionally, she spoke very specifically in the language that James shared with Miranda and Thomas.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Interesting.
Again, it has to be unintentional. She did not know that Don Quixote was important to them. But what a beautiful moment. And it's true, like in the scene, when she says it, he's already walking away, but he looks back at her and she gives him a little smile. And then we focus on his face. And this is a moment where he's like, holy shit, this woman, she's one of us.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful moment of connection between them.
Yeah. Wow. That is great.
Isn't that great? I love it so much.
I would have definitely missed that. That's wonderful.
I would have missed it too. So again, thank you, John, for that. That is a wonderful gift to us that we get to understand the levels of what that quote meant for the show and for our characters. Okay, so next we have the scene with Maddie and Emmy.
Yes, which is lovely.
Oh my goodness. Right. So it's important because we understand about resistance and fear and all of this, but really what's important here is this moment where Maddie finds out that Silver is alive.
Yes, the relief on her face and the turning away to let that tear fall. Oh, it's beautiful.
I know. It's amazing. Before we get their reunion, we have a lovely scene with Silver and Israel Hands. Can I just say, I love these two.
They're pretty great, right? They're fun. And a little levity here, too, which is nice. This episode needed levity.
Right. We got really so little. Like, we had 2 scenes of levity in this whole episode, and this is one of them. Yes. I love this. He throws him a fish, and Silver says, I'm not shackled. Sorry. And Hans says, do you plan to run? And Silver says, do I need to run? And then Israel says, it would be fun for me to see. I'm sorry. I know it's wrong for me to love that tasteless. So much. But I love it. I'm madly in love with Israel Hands. I really am. He's
fascinating.
He is, right?
Yeah, he really is interesting.
He's a fascinating character. I'm so looking forward to seeing the development of him.
Sure.
And then he says, how would you do it? And Silver thinks he's still talking about the running. So he says, with great difficulty, I imagine. But then Israel says, no, seriously, how would you take Nassau?
Right.
And the part of this that's interesting to me is that he says, when I did it.
Yeah.
He doesn't say when we did it. So now I feel like this shows us how much what Silver said to him in the last episode really struck home with him. Mm-hmm. Israel has
interesting.
He has pride in what he did.
Yeah, sure.
And then he says, when I did it, I had Teach and an army of my brothers behind me. Again, this is a person who saw the great pirate, the famous pirate,
right,
as basically his backup, right? He is fascinating to me.
Wow, yeah.
So then he says, do you want to play Teach? Where's your army? Who's the rest of the gang?
Mm-hmm. You're about to find out, son.
Yeah, he is.
I'll tell you what, that reveal with Flint coming up behind the soldiers was just so much fun. That was so awesome.
I loved it. It's so awesome. Mm-hmm. I love how happy Silver and Flint are to see each other.
Yeah.
I really do. I just, again, I know we had this argument about whether they're friends. I think they're friends. I really do. I think they're friends now.
It is really starting to look like it now. Yeah. And honestly, even more, first of all, the casualness with which they have the conversation about Billy.
Isn't that conversation
Billy
fabulous?
is like, yep. Tried to kill you? Yep. And Maddie? Her too. Like, it's just, this is a friendly conversation that they're having.
I love this, right? I love their interaction so much here.
It's very casual and friendly. Yeah, it's a conversation between buddies,
right? Between
right.
people who totally have an understanding about each other.
Yes, and that little language that friends get between each other.
Exactly, right? Where you don't need to finish your sentences; you just kind of have a conversation.
And it's so crazy to hear Flint talking about Billy as a real formidable enemy and praising his smarts and his competence
and being mellow about it.
Yeah.
Again,
well,
Flint's just like super sane here. It's pretty crazy.
He's really got his acting gear. As much as
this goes back to the thing that was hinted at in the beginning of season 2. This whole thing of strange pairs. I really feel like...
Right. I thought about the strange pairs thing myself. Yeah.
I feel like Flint and Silver have finally reached the place that was, kind of like laid out for us, not promised to us exactly, but kind of like hanging in the air ever since they showed in the first episode of season 2 that they work well together.
Right. Yeah.
And I think they finally reached that place now. Mm-hmm. And it's beautiful.
It is. When Silver and Maddie are reunited, which is, of course, beautiful. I love to see.
Oh my God, that moment was so beautiful.
It was a gorgeous moment. And of course, I love how much they're so excited to see each other that they drop all pretense. I love that.
I know.
But I love to see Flint's response to it too. There's that little bit of softening where I think, and again, this is the moment where I really do think, he is Silver's friend, where he's just, I think, genuinely happy for them to have found one another. And then you see his pain again for feeling outside of it and even more alone.
Exactly. That's how I saw it too. That's exactly how I saw it. Yeah, and I think, there may be some sense of like, I once loved like that. There's just, I feel like there's so many probably layers of what is going on with Flint. Who knows, right? He had just bonded with Maddie.
Yeah.
And he had been bonding with Silver, so, maybe like this moment of like, oh shit, I'm actually the third wheel. I just feel like there's so many levels of emotion that could be read into what, right. And, again, Toby Stephens.
And of course, Toby Stephens is going to show us every single thing. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Toby Stephens managing to make, I feel like almost any reading you put on his emotions right there, all work. And that's what's the strength of it that's not a weakness that we could have a million interpretations of that moment. That's the strength of it.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we're all going to bring into, the Silver and Maddie reunion, it's obvious the emotional content happening there, and it's powerful and it's beautiful. the look that Flint has afterwards is so somehow subtle and beautiful that I feel like every single person who watches it could kind of insert their own experience into it. And that's one of the things I love about about his performance is that I feel like it gives room for all of us to identify with him. I mean, again, Flint can be crazy.
Yeah.
Flint can be relatable, and this is one of his relatable moments. And I feel like the fact that Toby Stephens has managed to create these broad, relatable moments that really can mean something to everyone challenges us in a beautiful way, in a very Black Sails way, so that when he is kind of crazy Flint, he takes us there with him.
Yeah, sure.
Because we so can relate to him in his quieter moments, we're forced to also relate to him when he's being a person we don't imagine, not that we can't relate to, when he's being a person that we don't imagine ourselves relating to.
Right.
We're taken there anyway because there were those other moments where we totally got him and totally related it to our own personal experience, whatever that personal experience is.
Yeah.
And I will be forever thankful for that because that is gorgeous. All right, so let's talk now about our showdown in Nassau. Like, I know that you are better in the language of Westerns than me. A lot better. This felt to me like a Western. This felt to me like totally like the language of a Western, even though I'm not so good at that. But just like
okay,
like that they're entering Nassau, and it's like all dusty and empty feeling.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Although let's not skip right before they come into town and they're talking together up in that whatever that open
sure
building is.
Right.
Yeah,
of course.
And
that's just very significant, right?
Yeah. And we see just how much, again, the storytelling has been so important to the inciting of this war.
Absolutely.
And how Flint says, they've been told what's expected of them when he returns. Now all we need him to do is return.
And Flint's talking about Silver.
He is. Flint has put the narrative above his name.
Exactly.
Which is really important. When they ride into town, and now it does feel westerny, and Silver is on that horse and Flint is behind him.
Right.
He is absolutely putting the power of story above the power of the name of Flint. Because for him, I think the name of Flint was the story he was telling.
Right.
And now he realizes that it's become something bigger. And he's putting Nassau, the dream, the ideal, the story above his name. And you're right. It's probably the sanest he's ever been. It's fantastic.
The sanest. I mean, for him, it's not like I don't think it's ever been for him his name the way it's been for Jack. But it's about his personality of no one can do what I can do.
Yes, they can't do what I can do. Sure, exactly. Yeah.
So for Flint, for me, it's really about the micromanaging. It's so interesting because, again, we can't predict what will be in the season, and there might be huge conflict between Flint and Silver.
Sure.
This moment, they're doing something I really didn't think was possible at the end of season 3 when I talked about how Silver and Maddie were talking about how the Queen recognized Maddie as her successor, possibly being the person who needs to take control now. I was all like, there's no way Flint's going to do that. Like, he's never going to let Silver be in control. And yet, in this moment,
he is,
he's so... Right, he's so level-headed, talking about how the story's been laid, but it's Silver's story, and that all that needs to happen is for Silver to show up. It's really, again, it's one of those moments where it's fascinating, it's surprising, but not so surprising that it's out of character.
Right, yeah.
We've always known that Flint is good at using a narrative.
Sure.
And he's recognizing here that the narrative that is the right narrative or the useful narrative or the strong narrative is that of Silver, not of himself.
Yeah.
But I didn't expect this from him. I'm very proud of him.
No.
I'm super proud of Flint right now.
He's handling it with such grace.
Right. He really is.
Yeah.
As is Silver. I mean, I think they're both...
Sure.
They're both managing this beautifully. And
well, I love that little exchange between them where I think Flint just gives him a look, and Silver says, "They'll come."
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I know. This is
It's back to the liked and feared thing.
yep. And this is just, this is my favorite Flint and Silver. I mean, there are all sorts of
yeah, it's
aspects of this episode that are troubling for me. Teach dying. You're right. Weird cinematography and directing.
Weird cinematography.
And
yeah.
and yet, best Flint Silver I think we might have ever had.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Right?
And good Eleanor.
Good.
Eleanor.
No. Good lots of people. Baddie's awesome.
Sure.
Max is awesome. Eleanor, right. She's like as right on as she's ever been. Took her a little talking. Max needed to give her a talking to get her on board. But once she did, Eleanor's totally on board. But yeah. So they're entering this. Silver's on that horse. Again, horses feeling very significant. We had Billy on a horse. Now we have Silver on a horse. Horse seemingly sign of leadership.
Yeah, sure. Power, leadership.
Right. So, right. And I had this whole feeling that this felt like a Western. Okay. Then they get to in front of the governor's mansion and the gallows. I know we've already mentioned this, but can we give a little bit more attention to that
that dismount?
Oh my God.
It was amazing.
Right?
Oh, that was so cool.
I mean,
yeah, that was.
I want no one to get me wrong. Vane's dismount. Unbelievable. Epic. Historic.
Yep. Sure. This is a good one too, though. I don't know. It's a one-legged horse dismount. It's just
exactly, and it's so. He's so cool.
He's so cool.
He's so cool, right?
He learned a little something from Charles Vane. Yep. No, it's good. It's good.
Again, maybe I shouldn't have brought up Vane because I don't want to make this a competition, but at the same time, kind of want to give Silver like killer props for just an amazing dismount. Yeah. Also, I wanted to note that Silver now has 2 guns on his chest.
He sure does, which was very Western. Yeah, well, for sure.
Super Western, super Teach style.
Oh, Teach style, yeah.
Right.
I was going to say gangster, too. But yes, super Teach style.
So, the king is dead. Long live the king.
Wow. Yep.
Right?
Yep. No, you're totally right. Called it. Yeah, you're totally right.
I don't think that was unintentional.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Yep, I'm glad you caught that.
Okay, so then we have them dismount, and they're being badass, and we have...
There's the face-off.
Right, we have our face-off. So Berenger has his people. They seem super outnumbered, and then we get a whistle, just like we did.
The whistle was so cool.
Right, which is also just like we had at the Underhill estate. Like, this is Maddie's thing. Oh, yeah. She whistles, or somebody whistles for her. I have a feeling somebody whistles. I doubt it's Maddie. Maddie's too regal for whistling. She has a whistler. She has an official whistler.
Right. She just gestures towards him or nods.
Exactly. Yes. And then suddenly it's seeming pretty even.
Right.
And it starts, but then Berenger has his, like, his auxiliary flank up on that wall. Mm-hmm. And then you have, like, the surprise, group that was alienated coming. It just felt like a Western, no? Is that not a thing?
No, you're totally right.
Is that not
I'm
a thing that happens in Westerns, like the thing where Billy and his crew shows up?
It sure could be. The truth is, as much as I appreciate Westerns, I don't have a really strong working knowledge of them, to be honest.
All right, listeners, if somebody knows more about Westerns than us, please tell us. Like, because to me, in my lack of knowledge, it felt like super duper Western scenario.
Right.
And I loved it. And so, Billy shows up with his crew and they're just being brutal. Billy's facial expressions, man, he's freaking me out a little bit.
He's fierce.
Right?
Yeah, he's fierce. But God, I loved seeing him when he came in. I was just like, Billy, of course. No, it was amazing.
That was right. That was just like that last minute, save. Which of course they knew about this. I mean, I'm positive that Billy had spies in Nassau who knew him, because it wasn't like this showdown wasn't completely talked about ahead of time and heralded, in fact, from both sides. Okay, let's talk about Israel Hands.
Man.
I love
Okay, well, he's amazing. Amazing to watch.
I know, right?
I was glad that they gave him Berenger.
I think it was crucial that they gave him Berenger.
Yeah, definitely.
On many levels. I mean, I love this is a callback essentially to the story we know. We know that Israel Hands is the person that he severed the cord with the former governor, and that's what he's doing again. In the same place, in front of the governor's mansion. And I love the moment. Okay, so he's like super stealth, super badass, with his whatever. What is that? It's not an axe exactly. And what is it that he has? He has like
It is like an axe.
it's something
I'm not sure
axe-like
exactly.
and sword-like.
I call it an
and
axe.
I really liked it, whatever it was.
It's badass. Yeah.
And then I love that he has Berenger, and he's he could kill him any second. And then you've got Flint and Silver looking at him. And they both pause and they're watching him. And again, he's about to sever the cord again. But it's Silver who gives him the nod. He looks to Silver.
Yeah.
And Silver's the one who gives him the nod. Because Israel Hands is Silver's man now.
Yeah, definitely.
And I
Oh, it's
love
so cool.
that. I love that. I love
Yeah.
it very much. And then that's what he does. He severs that cord yet again.
The vocal cords.
Well, yeah. Ew. Okay. That was
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that was a little grosser than I needed.
Again, it was really gruesome. It was more gruesome than it needed to be.
Did not
We
need
got
that.
the locket again, and again, the locket just doesn't do that much for me. I don't know if I was supposed to feel bad for him. I
No.
certainly didn't.
Nope, me neither.
Yeah.
No, right. And the dripping blood. Yeah, a little more gruesome than I needed.
Just a little more than I needed. Yep.
I did, again, with the same issue with the fighting scene, like it just, something about the light or the cinematography or something didn't work for me so much. Like I loved what was happening. I didn't love the way I was seeing it happen.
Yes.
But
Agreed.
I loved what
Yeah.
was happening enough to be like, fine, whatever.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. Agreed.
But yeah, the dripping blood did not work for me.
No. Too much.
I just didn't feel. I mean, again, we've had blood. I mean, it's not.
Sure.
It's not like
This was just different. It was just there
it
was something
felt
that
like it was.
more
It was felt like it.
gratuitous and gruesome and
Well, the dripping blood specifically felt to me like it was being like cinematic.
sure.
And
Okay, yep.
and one of the things I've always loved about Black Sail is that, like, even though it's in a totally different time frame that we know, and
Sure.
some of the characters we know are fictional characters, something about the way it looks and the way it's been directed and shot and acted always brought us to this sense of realism that really, I think, the realism generally really makes the divide between time and mythology disappear as much as possible so that we can relate to this.
Okay,
You know what I
sure.
mean? Like the way it's done has always been, in my eyes, in the view of making this most relatable to us as possible, which I think is really important. It's really important for us to feel like, that it's not like a fantasy story that's so far from us that anything could happen. It's always been very important that it's brought to our world and our emotions and our morality. I feel like this visual style really separated us from that and made it seem very, I don't, cinematic isn't the right word, but maybe it is. I don't know. It makes it feel very not relatable, less relatable. Sure. It's still very relatable. I mean, it's a beautiful story and it's characters that we love and all of that. But I feel like there were aspects of the way it was shot that separated me from the emotions of the experience. And that's something I don't want with Black Sails.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
But overall, still killer episode.
I see what you did there.
Oh, wow. That was so not intentional. I am not.
I know,
I'm not
I know,
punny.
I know.
I'm not punny, and I'm not breaking heart punny even more so. Oh, man. Now I'm just sad again.
Well, let's raise a glass to Teach.
Let's raise a glass to Teach. You are
Edward Teach.
sentimental and a badass at the same time, and that makes you an amazing character.
Brilliant and strong, my
Yes,
friend.
yes.
We saw it too.
Yes, that's true. We saw your both sides just like Jack did. We loved you very much. Me in particular.
You in particular, yeah.
Ready to guns! Full complement!
And to bring us back to happy, tell me, Daphne, what was your favorite part?
I think my favorite part was, could I say anything but Jack and Teach?
Oh, sure, of course, yeah.
I think my favorite part was, have you ever captained a ship this large?
Yeah.
God, no. Have you ever captained a ship like this? Sure.
Sure. Yeah. Good. Yeah, that was an excellent exchange.
That's my favorite part. No question. What's your favorite part, Liz?
I think from the moment that Flint shows up and kills the soldiers and Silver says, that's how, and they walk down that path to the reunion with Maddie. That sequence is my favorite part.
Yeah, I expected the reunion with Maddie to be your favorite.
Yeah, but it does go more than that because the whole conversation they have about Billy, and again, you see the cementing of the friendship and the partnership with Flint. Yeah, all of that together.
And we had
was definitely my favorite.
We had a serious cementing of Flint and Maddie too. We really need.
We did.
We know how this show loves threesomes.
Oh yeah,
of all sorts. So we
Triumphants.
we need to keep an eye on this, on how the three of them relate to each other.
Yep.
Okay, so Liz, it is time for our brand new game that we are still getting good at. So just to remind everyone, our new game is that we bring up something that we ask you all to predict one way or the other. And it turns out people are really good at this game.
Yeah, so I'm having to come up with a lot of pirate names suddenly. So bear with me, y'all. I'm doing my best. I'm not actually a professional pirate namer.
Well,
although I guess I kind of am now.
You kind of are now, Liz. You know.
Oh, dear.
Yes.
I'll get a business card.
Exactly.
Okay.
We'll make you a business card. Queen of Nassau, professional maker of pirate names. So we do have a lot of people. The question for this week's game is whether our mystery man from episode 1 became friend or foe to Silver by the end of episode 2 of season 4. And it's Israel Hands. We love him, and we definitely think they're friends. So, and I have to say, Captain Silver Sue O'Shandy did not only make our spreadsheet, she didn't only make it, she's now going to be doing the upkeep on it. So, Silver Sue.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Captain Silver Sue. This is why you have an effing armada.
Right. We
She's
adore
amazing.
you, and this is why we lost track, because we're actually really,
Right.
we're really bad. We're good at making the game. Liz is good at
Bad at
making the
keeping
names.
track.
Really
Okay.
bad at keeping track. I'm really good at keeping track of what lines happened in what episode of Black Sails. Not good at keeping track of this.
That's okay. Well, let's start with her then, because she gets a new ship today, right?
She does, Silver Sue.
So we'll tip our hat to Captain Silver Sue O'Shandy with her new ship that she claims, ships I took. The Ruby Red.
All right. Next, at Gypsy Book Nerd, who is our Esmeralda Salt, but I think
Yes.
she's not using that name right now. You are now a quartermaster.
Congratulations. I voted for you.
I voted for you too. At M the Beastie, who I gotta say, you've been super lovely on the Twitter and been really fun for us with
good.
your Twitter interactions with Fathoms Deep. You get a pirate name.
Okay, so the Beastie, her name said Cassie Mack, so I actually ripped off of that for Cassandra McKillen.
Ooh, I
like it, right?
that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Next, at Jamie91, you get a pirate name.
Jamie, 91, you get Medusa May.
Ooh, lovely.
That's pretty cool, right? I like that one. Also, May with an E, just so you know.
Okay. All right, Silver Sue, you got that. Okay. Next, my darling Megan at Ithaca. Also, I must note, she has the account Rackham Reactions.
Oh, that's hers?
Yes, y'all should follow it.
Super fun. Definitely.
She makes amazing gifts. So everyone go follow her because she does make the funnest GIFs that we sometimes use. If you see the ones with the fancy script, those are hers. So you, Megan, are now a quartermaster also.
Congratulations.
Next up, Alistair Stevens at Paper Bullets, who has...
He finally gets a pirate name. Okay, so our Scotsman friend gets a literary and a Scottish name. So he gets Starbuck Killiecrankie, which I really like. So, and Starbuck is like a triple layered joke because we get Starbuck from Moby Dick, and then also Starbuck Battlestar Galactica. Also, Starbuck is what Dana Scully's dad calls her. So it's like hitting on every level.
Wow.
I thought about this one real hard. Okay, Starbuck Killiecrankie. I like that one a lot. And Killiecrankie's a Scottish battlefield. Looked that up too. Okay.
Well done, Liz. Okay.
Thanks. I'm doing my best on these things. Doing my best.
All right. Chum Bucket Charlie. I remember some of them. I'm good with some of the names. Charlie.
Chum Bucket Charlie.
At Charlie 1877. You get a ship.
Mm-hmm. Another ship. And Chum Bucket Charlie has fish ships. So the new one is the Nautilus.
Excellent.
Pretty cool, right?
That is extremely cool. Okay. Next, another new pirate name. At Bryce Winterson. You get a name.
Okay. Bryce Winterson is an awesome name. I have trouble improving upon it because it's like Bryce Winterson is just cool. So we have Bryce the Ice Heart Winterson, which I really like. It's like Pirate meets Game of Thrones. I'm really into it.
I like it too. Okay.
Yeah, right? Ice Heart. Totally cool.
And then at Old Long John, you get to be a bosun now. We'll get you a whistle.
Congratulations.
Yes, you have a virtual whistle from us.
A virtual whistle. Yep.
That's all I can offer. Mm-hmm. Stormy Morley at Emily Emerly.
Mm-hmm. Stormy Morley, I'm going to give you one of Woodes Rogers' ships since he is not on our list anymore. I'm going to let you take a Woodes Rogers ship. My favorite named ship, the Willing Mind, is now yours.
There we go. Yes. You know,
I feel good about that. I felt some sort of vindication by giving away one of his ships.
That's great. I like that too. Okay. Also, good friend of ours.
Yes.
Gets a pirate name at Usagi Biker. What's Usagi Biker's pirate name?
Usagi Biker, you are Red Tide Rider.
Ooh, I like that very much.
That's
too.
Good, right?
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
I like her. Yep, that's a good one.
Okay, and our next pirate name is at K Mulholland 77.
Mm-hmm. I like Mulholland a lot too, so I kept Mulholland, and I also ripped off her Instagram account. So she is Crazy Kate Mulholland, which is totally good.
That is totally good.
Right.
Yeah.
Crazy Kate Mulholland. I like it.
I like it. I did Black Sails research. You did pirate name research for real.
I have seriously worked on these pirate names. I'm telling you what. Yeah. I had to up my game.
You did. Next is at Thomas Sarah C.
Okay. And this one is just totally a funsy name. So this one is Would I Wilkins.
Oh, I like that too.
I just like it too.
I like that. Okay. Scorpion Pierce at Scorpion80 is now a captain. Congratulations.
Oh, taking a ship soon. Yep. That's what really gets cool.
Yep. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the ship names that you have for Scorpion Pierce.
Me too. Ooh, that'll be fun.
Next, at J.D. Birch gets a pirate name.
Okay, pirate name for Jade is Gemini Jade.
Nice.
I like that one too because it's like a constellation steered by the stars.
I like that too.
And Jade is like jewels. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yes, I agree.
Gemini Jade.
Okay, Next, at Carson356, you get a name.
Keelhaul Carson.
No. Oh, no.
I know, it's too soon. It's too soon, but it's a badass name.
Seriously?
I know. I'm sorry. I know. I know.
You know what? Everyone, like, tweet nice things at me. Like, I feel like
yeah, it's been a hard week for Daphne.
Everyone tweet nice things at me. I need it. Next up, Amanda Heldsinger, who is Beatrix Kiddo, I think. It's so funny. We tweet at each other a lot, and I'm not sure how to pronounce your handle, but I know your name.
Looks like Beatrix Kiddo to me.
And you are lovely. All right, what's Amanda's pirate name, Liz?
Topsail Trixie.
Ooh, I love that.
It's good, right? I'm telling you, I'm on my game today with the pirate names.
You are. Well, and now we have Barb Baran, who already has kind of a pirate name because she's Lois
So I gave her something
Vane.
entirely different. Yeah, I thought since she already picked one, I'd give her something entirely different. So I did Barbed Wire O'Blarney.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I think Barb will like that. Barb, proper pirate.
Proper pirate.
All right. So next week's question, since Rogers has his ship and his soldiers, but NASA is now in the hands of the pirates, will Rogers actually make it onto land on Nassau, not Providence Island? Will he make it into Nassau next week in episode 404?
Because that's sure his plan. Okay.
You know what? He has a big surprise in store for him. And you know what? I'm kind of happy about that because I'm really mad at him right now.
He's on your shit list.
He really, really is. Okay, and so we have two announcements. One, I have not yet finished editing our Ask FD video, but we did record it in New York. So
We did, yeah.
So that'll be up sometime next week, and we will tweet about it. And in order to see it, you have to become a patron of Common Room Radio on Patreon, and then you'll be able to see that video, also our last Ask FD video, and all sorts of other great content.
It's also where all the gag reels are for our Mighty Fine Shindig show. So there's lots of fun.
There's lots of fun stuff there. And also, I just wanted to quickly announce our special episode that will come out sometime in the next week. In addition to him finally getting his pirate name, Alistair Stevens, who if you've listened to all of our episodes, you've heard us mention him many times. Newer listeners.
Many times, yes.
Newer listeners will have the pleasure of meeting him. Alistair Stevens from Storywonk, one of our favorite podcasters in the whole world, is going to join us because he finally finished watching Black Sails and he has thoughts.
Lots of thoughts, lots of things to say.
Yes, and we want to hear them. So that's going to be a really fun discussion, and that is going to be the first of what's going to be quite a few special episodes that we're going to have during season 4.
All right, well then that wraps us up until next week. From Common Room Radio, I'm Liz Stevens.
And I'm Daphne Olive.
Fathoms Deep is a Common Room Radio production. For more information and access to other programs, please visit us at commonroomradio.com. To show your support, pledges of as little as $1 a month can be made to patreon.com/commonroomradio. Join the conversation by using the hashtag #Fathoms_Deep and follow us on Twitter at BlackSailsCast. We ask that you keep your tweets respectful and positive, and please avoid spoilers. If you have more to say, we want to hear it in all its spoiler glory. Email us at podcast@commonroomradio.com with Fathoms Deep in the subject line. Thanks for listening.